My name is Sarah, and I still remember the exact moment my life split into two parts. Before him, and after him. It was a normal Tuesday morning. Nothing felt different. Nothing warned me. I walked into the office with my usual coffee, sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and smiled. Because that day, I thought I was finally going to get what I deserved. 3 months of hard work. Late nights. Missed dinners. Sacrificed weekends. All leading to one presentation. One meeting. One opportunity that could change my entire career. But what I didn't know was, someone else was already preparing to take it from me. Not a stranger. Not a competitor. Someone I trusted. Someone I helped. Someone I called a friend. And by the end of that day, he didn't just steal my work. He tried to erase me from my own story. But here's the truth no one tells you. Revenge isn't about shouting. It isn't about fighting. And it definitely isn't about breaking the rules. The most powerful revenge is when you stay silent and let the truth destroy them. This is the story of how I did exactly that. If you like this story, subscribe to The Revenge File 396 for more intense revenge and betrayal stories every week. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I want to hear your story too. His name was Daniel. We joined the company around the same time. Same department. Same level. Same dreams. At first, we were just colleagues. Then slowly, we became something more. We stayed late together. Worked on projects side by side. Shared ideas. Helped each other fix mistakes. He used to say, "Man, we're going to rise together." And I believed him. That was my first mistake. Daniel was smart, no doubt about it. But he wasn't consistent. He had ideas, but no discipline. I had discipline, but fewer flashy ideas. So we balanced each other. Or at least, that's what I thought. Over time, I noticed small things. He would forget to mention my name in meetings. He would present shared ideas as his own, but I ignored it. Why? Because I trusted him. Because I thought that's just how teamwork works. Because I didn't want to believe something worse. Then one day, everything changed. Our manager announced a major opportunity. A high-value project. High visibility. Direct exposure to senior leadership. Whoever led it would likely get promoted. The room went silent. Everyone wanted it. But only one person would get it. And somehow, Daniel and I were both shortlisted. That should have been exciting, right? Two friends competing, fairly. That's what I thought. But Daniel had already started playing a different game. At first, nothing seemed unusual. We both started preparing. Research. Strategy. Presentations. We even discussed ideas together. He would ask, "What do you think about this approach?" And I would share openly. Because why wouldn't I? We were teammates. But slowly, something felt off. Every time I shared an idea, it would show up later in his version. More polished. More refined. And presented as his. Still, I ignored it. I told myself, maybe it's just a coincidence. But deep down, I knew. Then came the night before the final presentation. I stayed late. Very late. Perfecting every detail. Every slide. Every number. Every word. This wasn't just work anymore. This was my future. Around midnight, I finally finished. Exhausted, but proud. I saved my file. Closed my laptop. And left. I had no idea that someone else was about to open that same file. The next morning, I walked into the meeting room confident, prepared, ready. But within minutes, that confidence turned into confusion, then shock, then something worse. Because what I was about to see, it wasn't just betrayal. It was theft. And it was done perfectly. The meeting room was already half full when I walked in. Senior managers. Team leads. Even the director was there. This wasn't just another presentation. This was the moment. Daniel was already inside. Sitting calmly. Smiling. Relaxed. Too relaxed. I remember thinking, why does he look so confident? I sat down across from him. He nodded. Like everything was normal. Like nothing had changed. Like he hadn't already crossed a line I didn't even know existed. The manager stood up and said, "All right, let's begin. Daniel, you can go first." I leaned back. No problem. I was confident in my work. Let him go. But the moment he opened his presentation, something inside me froze. The first slide looked familiar. Too familiar. Then the second slide. My structure. My headings. My flow. My words. I felt my chest tighten. No, this can't be. Then he said it. Line by line. Exactly the way I had written it. Even the phrases I had carefully crafted at midnight. Even the examples I personally researched. Even the closing statement. That I thought was mine. He didn't just copy my work. He became me in that room. And no one noticed. No one questioned it. Why would they? He was confident. Smooth. Prepared. And I was sitting there in silence, watching my own work being presented by someone else. By the time Daniel finished, the room was impressive. Nods. Smiles. Notes are being taken. The director even said, "Excellent work, Daniel. Very well thought out." Every word felt like a slap. Then it was my turn. I stood up slowly. My hands felt cold. My mind was racing. What do I do? If I present this, it will look like I copied him. If I change it, I'll lose everything. I plugged in my laptop anyway, took a breath, and started. But within seconds, I could feel it. The energy in the room had changed. People weren't impressed anymore. They were confused. Some even looked uncomfortable. One manager whispered to another. And then someone said it out loud. "Isn't this very similar to Daniel's presentation?" That was it. That one sentence destroyed everything. I tried to explain. I said, we worked on similar ideas, but even I knew how weak that sounded. Because the truth sounded like an excuse. And lies often sound more confident. Daniel sat there quietly. Didn't interrupt. Didn't defend me. Didn't say a single word. He didn't need to. He had already won. By the end of the meeting, the decision was clear. The project would go to Daniel. And just like that, 3 months of my work gone. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was, no one believed me. That evening, I sat alone in my car. Engine off. Lights off. Just silence. My phone kept buzzing. Messages from colleagues. "Unlucky man. Better luck next time." No one said, "I believe you." Because no one did. I replayed the meeting in my head. Every moment. Every word. Every look. And then, the anger came. Not loud. Not explosive. But quiet. Heavy. Sharp. The kind of anger that doesn't make you shout. It makes you think. I had 2 choices. Option 1. Confront Daniel. Accuse him. Create drama. But what would that do? There was no proof. It would make me look desperate. Weak. Bitter. Exactly how he wanted me to look. Option 2. Stay silent. Watch. Wait. And find the truth. Not just feel it. Prove it. That night, I made a decision. I wouldn't fight him. Not directly. I wouldn't argue. I wouldn't complain. I wouldn't beg anyone to believe me. Instead, I would do something far more dangerous. I would let him think. He got away with it. Because people like Daniel don't stop after one win. They get comfortable, careless, greedy. And when they do, they make mistakes. Big ones. Obvious ones. And when that happens, I would be ready. Not to attack. Not to break the rules. But to expose the truth so clearly that no one could ignore it. That was the moment. I stopped being the victim and started becoming something else. Over the next few weeks, Daniel's career started rising. Faster than ever. New responsibilities. More visibility. More trust. But what no one knew was, I was watching everything. Collecting everything. Waiting. Because revenge. It isn't about reacting fast. It's about timing it perfectly. And Daniel, about to make his first real mistake. In the weeks that followed, Daniel became the star of the office. The same people who barely noticed him before now listened to everything he said. Managers praised him. Leaders trusted him. Even new employees looked up to him. And every time someone said, "Daniel did an amazing job on that project," I felt it. Not angry anymore. Something colder. Because I knew the truth. And the truth has a strange power. It makes lies feel temporary. At first, I avoided him, kept my distance, focused on my own work, stayed quiet. But silence doesn't mean blindness. I started observing small things at first. The way he spoke in meetings, the way he explained ideas, the way he responded when someone asked a deep question. That's when I noticed it. Daniel wasn't just confident. He was repeating patterns. He relied heavily on structured ideas, detailed frameworks, well-crafted language, the kind of work that takes time, the time I knew he didn't invest. Because I had seen his habits. He cut corners, rushed tasks, avoided deep work. So how was he suddenly delivering perfect strategies? Simple. He wasn't creating them. He was taking them. And I wasn't the only one. It happened during a casual conversation in the break room. A colleague named Sarah was venting. Frustrated. Confused. She said, "I don't get it. I shared an idea with Daniel last week, and now he presented it like it was his." My heart skipped. I didn't react immediately. Just listened. Another colleague nodded. "The same thing happened to me last month." That was it. That was the moment everything became clear. This wasn't a one-time betrayal. This was a pattern. A system. Daniel wasn't just opportunistic. He was strategic. He built trust, collected ideas, refined them, then presented them at the right moment, as his own. And, because he did it confidently, no one questioned him. I wanted to speak, to tell them he did the same thing to me. But I didn't. Not yet. Because something bigger was forming. This wasn't about proving my truth anymore. This was about exposing his pattern. And patterns are much harder to defend. That evening, I went home and opened my laptop. Not to work, but to think. To connect the dots. To plan. Because now, this wasn't emotional anymore. This was strategic. Revenge, when done right, doesn't look like revenge. It looks like patience. The next day, I changed my approach completely. I didn't avoid Daniel anymore. I did the opposite. I got closer. Friendly again. Helpful again. Interested again. Because the closer you are to someone, the more they reveal. And Daniel? He didn't suspect a thing. Why would he? In his mind, he had already won. He thought I was defeated, broken, irrelevant. That assumption, it was his biggest weakness. I started documenting everything. Quietly. Carefully. Every meeting where ideas were shared. Every conversation where someone mentioned their work. Every time Daniel repeated something that wasn't his. But I didn't just collect moments. I collected proof. Time-stamped notes. Email trails. Version histories of documents. Subtle differences between the original ideas and his presentations. Nothing illegal. Nothing unethical. Just facts. Clear. Simple. Undeniable. Then I took it one step further. I started testing him. In small ways. I would casually mention an idea to him. Something unique. Something specific. And then wait. A few days later. There it was. The same idea. Repackaged. Presented. Praised. Every test confirmed it. Daniel wasn't just stealing occasionally. He depended on it. And dependency creates vulnerability. Now I had something powerful. Not anger. Not suspicion. But evidence. And evidence changes everything. Weeks passed. My collection grew stronger. Clearer. Sharper. But I still didn't act. Because timing is everything. Then one day, an even bigger opportunity was announced. Bigger than the last one. More visibility. More pressure. More risk. And Daniel was chosen again. That's when I realized this wasn't just his next win. This was his setup. Because this time, I wasn't going to stop him. I was going to let him go further than ever before. So when he fell, everyone would see it. A month later, the announcement came. A new project. Bigger than anything before. Cross-department. High stakes. Direct reporting to senior leadership. This wasn't just about performance anymore. This was about reputation. And, just like before, Daniel's name was at the top of the list. People clapped. Congratulated him. said things like, "You're the perfect choice." I stood there quietly, watching, not reacting, because this time, I wasn't surprised. I was ready. The more important the project, the more attention it gets. The more attention, the more scrutiny. And Daniel? He had built his success on borrowed ideas. That works in small rooms. But on a bigger stage, every detail matters. Every question digs deeper. Every assumption gets tested. This wasn't just another opportunity for him. It was a spotlight. And I was about to make sure. That spotlight didn't hide anything. That same day, something unexpected happened. Daniel walked up to me, smiling, confident, like nothing had ever happened. He said, "Hey, I might need your help on this project. You're good with structure." For a second, I almost laughed, but I didn't. I nodded, calmly. Of course, because sometimes, the best way to expose someone, it is to give them exactly what they want. Working with Daniel again felt strange, but I didn't let it show. I acted normally, supportive, professional, exactly how he expected me to be. Because the moment he suspects anything, the game is over. So I played my role perfectly. He started sharing his ideas with me, or at least, what he called his ideas. I listened, carefully, and slowly. I began doing something subtle. I guided him, not directly, not obviously, but just enough. I would suggest structures that looked strong, but required a deep understanding to defend. I would help refine ideas, but leave small gaps. Gaps that wouldn't be visible immediately, but it would become obvious under pressure. And Daniel? He took everything, confidently, without questioning, because that's what he always did. Take, refine, present. But this time, he didn't realize something important. These weren't just ideas anymore. They were setups. Every section he built, every point he prepared, was leading him toward a moment where he would have to prove it was truly his. And that moment, it was coming fast. The first review meeting came a week later. Mid-level managers. Internal feedback. Nothing too intense. Daniel presented confidently. Like always. Clean slides. Strong voice. Perfect flow. At first, everything seemed fine. Then the questions started. Simple at first. Clarifications. Details. But then, one manager asked something deeper. "Can you explain the reasoning behind this framework?" Daniel paused. Just for a second. But I noticed. He answered. But it was vague. Surface level. The manager nodded slowly, not fully convinced. Then another question. "Why did you choose this approach over alternatives?" Another pause. Another incomplete answer. And just like that, the room shifted. Slightly. Subtly. But noticeably. This wasn't the reaction he was used to. Usually, people were impressed. Now, they were thinking, analyzing, doubting. Daniel finished the presentation. Still confident on the outside. But I could see it. The small cracks. The hesitation. The uncertainty. After the meeting, he came to me. A little less confident than before. He said, "Some of those questions were unexpected." I nodded. "Yeah, senior teams tend to go deeper." He laughed it off. But I could tell. Something had changed. For the first time, Daniel realized something dangerous. Confidence alone. It wasn't enough. That meeting was just the beginning. Because the next one would include senior leadership. Sharper minds. Harder questions. Higher stakes. And by then, the cracks wouldn't be small anymore. They would be visible. Clear. Impossible to ignore. And I would still be standing right next to him, helping him build the very thing that would bring him down. The day of the leadership presentation arrived. This wasn't like the previous meetings. This was different. Bigger room. Higher stakes. Sharper eyes. Senior executives. Department heads. Decision makers. People who didn't just listen. They analyzed. They challenged. They exposed weaknesses without even trying. I walked in early, sat quietly in the corner, not as the presenter, but as an observer. Daniel arrived a few minutes later, dressed perfectly, confident walk, calm expression, From the outside. He looked ready, but I had seen the cracks. And I knew something he didn't. Today, confidence wouldn't save him. The meeting began. Introductions were short. No small talk. Straight to business. Daniel, take us through your strategy. He stood up, opened his presentation, and started. At first, it was smooth, clear voice, structured delivery, exactly like before. But then, the first interruption came. A senior executive leaned forward and asked, "Can you explain how this model adapts under pressure scenarios?" Silence. Not long. Just a second. But in high-stakes rooms, 1 second feels like forever. Daniel answered. But it wasn't strong. It wasn't convincing. And everyone in that room noticed. Then came the second question. More specific. More technical. More difficult. Another pause. Another incomplete answer. And now, the atmosphere changed. Not subtly this time. Clearly. People weren't just listening anymore. They were testing him. The questions kept coming. Faster now. Deeper. Sharpened. Each one targets a different part of the strategy. Each one exposes a gap. And Daniel was falling behind. His answers became shorter, less clear, less confident. He started repeating phrases, using vague language, trying to sound convincing, without actually saying anything. That's when it happened. One executive said, "I'm trying to understand. Did you personally develop this framework?" The room went quiet. Completely quiet. Daniel smiled. Nervous this time. Yes. I led the development. Led. Not created. Not designed. Just led. The executive nodded slowly. Then asked, "Then you should be able to explain this section in detail." He pointed to a slide. One of the sections I had carefully shaped. One that looked simple, but required real understanding to defend. Daniel looked at the slide, then back to the room. And for the first time, he didn't answer immediately. Seconds passed. Too many. Then he started speaking. But it didn't make sense. Not fully. Not clearly. And now, people weren't just doubtful. They were certain. Something was wrong. The meeting didn't end immediately. But the outcome. It was already decided. Daniel finished the presentation. Barely. The confidence was gone. The control was gone. All that was left was exposure. The executives thanked him. Politely. Professionally. But without enthusiasm. Without approval. Without trust. As people started leaving, I noticed something important. They weren't discussing the strategy. They were discussing him. Quiet conversations. Serious expressions. Doubt. Real doubt. Daniel walked out of the room slowly. Not the same way he walked in. No confidence. No smile. Just silence. He looked at me. Like he wanted reassurance. Like he wanted me to say, "You did fine." But I didn't. I just nodded. Calm. Neutral. Because this wasn't the end. Not yet. This was just the moment. Where the truth started becoming visible. And the most powerful part? I hadn't accused him. I hadn't exposed him directly. I hadn't broken any rules. I simply let him reveal himself. After that meeting, everything began to shift. Slowly at first. Then faster. Questions turned into concerns. Concerns turned into investigations. And Daniel? He started realizing something terrifying. This wasn't just a bad day. This was the beginning of the end. But what he didn't know was, I still hadn't played my strongest move. Because I wasn't just waiting for him to fall. I was preparing to make sure he couldn't recover. After the leadership presentation, the office felt different. Not loud, not dramatic, but quieter, heavier, like something invisible had changed. Daniel still came in every day, still sat at his desk, still opened his laptop like everything was normal. But it wasn't. People started treating him differently. Conversations became shorter. Smiles became forced. Meetings became careful. Because once doubt enters a room, it never really leaves. At first, it was subtle. Managers began asking more detailed questions, requesting more documentation, wanting clearer explanations. things that were never asked before. And Daniel? He struggled. Not openly, not obviously, but consistently. His answers lacked depth. His explanations felt incomplete. And people started noticing the pattern. Then came the emails. Requests for clarification. Follow-ups. Revisions. Each one is small on its own. But together, they formed pressure. Constant pressure. I watched it all happen. Quietly. Patiently. Because this wasn't luck. This was the result of everything leading up to this moment. But even now, I didn't step in. Not yet. Because suspicion alone is enough. For something to truly collapse. People need proof. And I had it. A few days later, something unexpected happened. Or maybe it was inevitable. I spoke up. Not publicly. Not dramatically. But quietly, to a manager. I shared my experience. About how her idea had been taken. Presented without credit. At first, it was just one voice. But one voice creates courage. Another colleague followed. Then another. Different stories. Same pattern. Trust. Sharing. Then silence. While someone else took the credit. Daniel's name kept coming up. Again and again. That's when it stopped being a coincidence. And started becoming a case. Management couldn't ignore it anymore. Because now, it wasn't just about performance. It was about integrity. And integrity is something no company can afford to question. I could feel the shift getting stronger. The conversations are becoming more serious. More focused. And Daniel? He started noticing it too. You could see it in his face. The uncertainty. The tension. The way he checked his phone more often. The way he avoided eye contact. The way his confidence started fading. But even then, he didn't know the full truth. He thought this was temporary. Something he could explain. Fix. Move past. He didn't know. That is the strongest piece of evidence. Was still waiting. I had everything ready. Weeks of documentation. Clear timelines. Original drafts. Email trails. Version histories. Patterns. Proof. But the key wasn't what I had. It was when I would use it. Too early. And it would look personal. Too late. And it wouldn't matter. So I waited. For the perfect moment. And it came. Management scheduled a formal review. Not just for the project, but for Daniel. A closed-room discussion. Serious. Focused. Decisive. That's when I stepped in. Calmly. Professionally. Without emotion. I requested to share something relevant. Not an accusation. Not a complaint. Just information. They allowed it. I walked into that room with one goal. Not to destroy him. Not to attack him. But to show the truth. So clearly that no one could deny it. I started with facts. Simple. Organized. Undeniable. I showed how ideas were first discussed. Then documented. Then later presented. By Daniel. Without credit. I showed multiple cases. Different people. Same pattern. I showed timelines. Side-by-side comparisons. Original drafts versus final presentations. No exaggeration. No emotion. Just truth. The room went silent. Not confused. Not doubtful. Certain. Because truth doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be clear. And in that moment, everything changed. Daniel was called in next. And for the first time, he wasn't in control. No prepared slides. No structured presentation. No borrowed ideas. Just questions. Direct. Clear. Unavoidable. And this time, there was no one to guide him. No one to help him. No way to escape. Because the same system he used to rise was now the reason he would fall? Daniel was called into the room. I was already seated. So were the managers. And for the first time since all of this began, he didn't look confident. He looked uncertain. He walked in, glanced around, then sat down slowly. No smile. No casual tone. Just tension. The manager began. Calm voice. Direct words. Daniel, we've reviewed several concerns regarding your recent work. He nodded, trying to stay composed. Then they started asking questions. Not vague ones. Not surface-level ones. Specific. Detailed. Each one connected to the evidence I had presented. Can you explain how this idea originated? Who contributed to this section? Why does this timeline not match your previous statements? Every question was precise. And this time, there was no room for confidence without truth. Daniel tried. He really did. At first, he answered carefully, choosing words, avoiding direct statements. But the more he spoke, the clearer it became. He wasn't explaining. He was trying to survive. Then came the moment. One manager placed a document in front of him. A direct comparison. Original idea and his version. Side by side. Time-stamped. Clear. Undeniable. The manager asked, "Can you explain this?" Silence. Not a second. Not two. Long enough for the truth to settle in the room. Daniel looked at the paper. Then at the managers. Then, briefly at me. And in that moment, he knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't something he could talk his way out of. This was the end of the story he had been telling. He tried to speak, but nothing came out clearly. Because when the truth is complete, excuses sound empty. The decision wasn't announced immediately, but it didn't need to be. Everyone in that room already understood. The trust was broken. And in a professional world, that's everything. Over the next few days, changes started happening. Quietly, professionally, but permanently. Daniel was removed from the project. Then from key responsibilities. Then from visibility. No announcements. No public statements. Just absence. He was no longer part of. People stopped going to him for input. Stopped trusting his work. Stopped believing his words. Because once credibility is gone, it doesn't come back easily. And the most important part? No one said he was attacked. No one said he was treated unfairly. Because of the process. Through proof. Through truth. Daniel didn't fall because someone pushed him. He fell because the foundation he built. Never real. People often imagine revenge as something loud. Something dramatic. Something emotional. But the truth? The most powerful revenge. It's quiet. It's controlled. It doesn't break rules. It uses them. Weeks later, things started changing for me too. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. But steadily. Managers began noticing my work again. Colleagues started respecting my input more. Conversations shifted. Opportunities returned. But this time, something was different. I wasn't trying to prove myself anymore. I didn't need to. Because the truth had already done that. One day, a senior manager called me in. He said, "We've been observing your work closely. Your consistency stands out." That one sentence meant more than any promotion. Because it wasn't given. It was earned. Without shortcuts. Without stealing. Without pretending. And that's when I realized something important. This was never about destroying Daniel. It was about protecting myself. My work. My integrity. And letting the truth do what it always does. Reveal everything. If you've ever been betrayed. If someone has taken credit for your work. If you've been made to feel invisible. You know how painful it is. The anger. The frustration. The helplessness. The desire to fight back immediately. But here's what most people get wrong. Reacting fast. Feels good. But it rarely works. Because emotions fade. But evidence stays. And when you combine patience with clarity, with timing, you don't just defend yourself. You rise. Stronger. Smarter. Untouchable. Daniel thought he won in one meeting. But real outcomes aren't decided in moments. They're decided over time. Through truth. Through consistency. Through character. So if you ever find yourself in that situation, don't rush. Don't shout. Don't break the rules. Instead, watch. Learn. Prepare. And when the time is right, let the truth speak. Because when it does, it doesn't just expose them. It defines you.